Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
We've talked a few times about the moving company scam, and Stephen of the PH sent me a note yesterday, said, Steve, check it out. Arrests have been made. And I had to double check and triple check the dates to make sure this was not a repeat story, because we had several stories that have overlapped in that this story, we already talked about the investigation that led up to the arrests. And previously, we've talked about people being arrested and charged by the Department of Justice in America. But this one's out of Canada. CBC News reports multiple arrests, hundreds of charges in a moving company scam. Police say all the belongings have since been returned to the rightful owners, at least in these cases. But again, the moving company scam is you want to move. You're going to move from where you are now to someplace else, and you got to move your stuff. Bunch of big stuff you got. So you call a couple of moving companies, and you go on the internet, you do a Google search, and you call the first one that pops up. Mistake number one, but we'll move on. So you call them and describe what you've got to them, and you describe it accurately. You tell them exactly what you've got, and they go, oh, and they quote you a price. They show up, load your stuff on the truck drives off, and then you get a phone call from the boss who says, my guys were on scene telling me that you were off by a factor of like 3. What you described would have been a $5,000 move, but you actually had $15,000 worth of stuff. I mean, going by weight and volume and all that. And the move was 3 times harder than what you described it was going to be. And you say that, dude, I got a contract with you. We signed a contract. Well, you might think you signed a contract with us, but if you read the fine print, it says, number one, that we have the right to change if you've misled us. And number two, it says that we've now got the right to hang on to your stuff until you pay us. So if you don't pay us, we're just going to drive the truck someplace else. You won't find your stuff. And if need be, we'll auction it off to get the money you owe us. And if your stuff doesn't sell for $15,000, we're going to sue you for the remainder. And that is how many moving scam scenarios play out. And we've talked about this before. I'm not saying all moving companies are scammers. I'm telling you right now that there are legitimate, upstanding movers who are pulling their hair out right now because they keep getting underbid by scammers who then rip people off. That's what's going on. So I'm here supporting the upright, honorable movers in the industry. Toronto police say they've made multiple arrests and they've laid hundreds of charges in a months-long fraud investigation in the moving industry. Police have said now that 4 people have been arrested just this week in connection with a moving company fraud in the area of Bellamy Road and Progress Avenue in Scarborough. Back in June, officers executed a warrant against several budget moving companies following an undercover investigation by CBC's Marketplace into a group of national moving companies accused of deceptive pricing. According to police, 2 men bought and operated the companies, quoting customers low amounts when they were reached out to online. However, police say after the companies picked up the belongings, they used contracts without signed amounts and would then withhold the customer's belongings until a higher amount was paid that police said would be thousands of dollars more than they were originally quoted. And by the way, a professional mover can show up at your house, walk through it, look around, and estimate it extremely accurately. I've known people in the moving industry. I'm not, Steve, you know everybody. I've actually known somebody who works in the moving industry. And she told me that their people are trained and they can figure this stuff out. And within a margin of error to the point where it's very, very close. So when the mover shows up, looks around and says, okay, loads the stuff in the truck, and then says, you owe us money, the mover is screwed up. The mover should have figured that out before they loaded a single thing on the truck. They should have. Police say it is believed that companies would then threaten to sell off the customer's belongings unless the higher amount was paid. In some cases, that actually happened. So they've documented cases where the movers showed up, loaded the stuff on the truck drives off, and then they say, you owe us more money. A dispute arises, the moving company says, fine, we'll take your stuff to auction and sell it. And they took it to auction and they sold it. On Friday, police say they arrested a 55-year-old Toronto woman who's been charged with theft over $5,000, conspiracy to commit an indictable offense, and mischief by interfering with property over $5,000. She's expected to appear in court in November. Now, I've heard of some of these words before. Mischief by interfering with property. I've never heard of that one. But again, these are our Canadian neighbors, and so they use slightly different words. 3 other people from Toronto are also facing hundreds of charges. Friends and business partners. One man's 30, another's 29, as well as a 26-year-old woman, have all been charged with dozens of offenses, including obtaining through false pretense, fraud over $5,000, possession of property obtained by crime, theft, fraud, and attempted fraud. So, fraud over $5,000, but possession of property obtained by crime. And again, I love the distinctions, and I've talked about this before. If I walk up to you and grab something from you and run away, it's robbery. If I walk up to you and threaten you and take something from you, that's potentially armed robbery, depending on how I threaten you. And if you hand it to me and say, hey, look at this, and I look at it, and then I run away, it's not robbery because I didn't take it from you, but I did misappropriate it. And the question is simply, why am I looking at it? Why is it my possession? And how did I then convert it into my own possession? So it could be conversion, it could be theft, it could be a bunch of different things. And here we have we have possession of property obtained by crime. So they're saying, in essence, that they were in possession of other people's stuff, and they managed to do that by crime. So 2 of them were each previously charged with 4 counts of fraud, mischief, possession of property obtained by crime and false pretense, as well as conspiracy to commit indictable offenses. It is not clear when they're expected to be in court. Police now say that all belongings have been returned to the customers who have outstanding cases. And here's where it gets crazy. The CBC Marketplace did a big investigation on these movers with hidden cameras and everything and a big expose. And the scary part is this has pretty much all been kind of encouraged by the internet. Because what happens is a company now could be in Singapore, but they set up a website and it makes it look like it's in America. And then they have people work for them or contractors, but they can be anywhere and from anywhere. And you can actually have a local phone number that somebody calls and you speak to somebody in Singapore or Florida or wherever it might be. And I remember speaking to somebody a couple years ago when I first heard about this scam. And they said that they had gone onto Google and had Googled movers, and they looked for the best movers in the area. And they thought they'd done their research. And they called a local company. And it turns out the local company was about 2,000 miles away. But they had a local phone number. And of course, you can do all that with the internet these days. And those good reviews are probably fake. And of course, somebody comes out, loads up all this stuff, drives off, and then they get the phone call. Just talked to my guys. You lied. You said you had this much stuff. You actually had this much stuff. Obviously we'll move the stuff for you, but it's going to cost you a lot more. And you got to pay it. And of course, at that moment in time, we got all your stuff. So it's kind of hard to argue with that. So in case you're curious, 4 people were arrested. And it sounds like from the story, the 4 worked together. Despite that, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different named companies right here. 13 different named companies right here. Move Me Again Transportation. All You Can Move. Canadian Principal Movers. Safebound Moving and Storage. Roadway Moving and Storage. 1228526 Canada Inc. That's the one I wanted and I couldn't get. 1228256 Canada Inc. All over Canada van lines. East Coast Star van lines. Greenway Moving and Storage. Moonstar van lines. 13448037 Canada Inc. Now see, if you can't get 1228256 Canada, well, you probably ought to call 13448037 Canada. They're almost as good. Oh, Canada Movers. Oh, Canada Movers. How patriotic. By the way, I absolutely love the Canadian national anthem. I go to hockey games, they play it. And don't get me wrong, I like the American national anthem as well. Canada's rocks. Canada's national anthem is just fabulous. It's fabulous. And New Vision Movers. That's if you want to get all new agey when you move your stuff. New Vision Movers. So they ran 13 different companies, some with such exciting names as Move Me Again and All You Can Move, and also 122822569 and 13448037. And by the way, last time I talked about something like that, I had several people call me and they go, Steve, it's a corporate name. You can name your corporation anything you want. I understand that I'm joking that the corporate name is 13448037. I understand that. Just trying to inject some levity here, okay? But the good news is arrests have been made. Now, in the timeline of justice, okay, first you've got to identify that an injustice occurred and who did it, who done it, okay? That's step number one. Step number two is getting the authorities interested and getting them to make an arrest. That's step two. Step three, which has not happened yet, but we want to see it happen, is we'd like to see justice served, and that would be drag them into court and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, and either have a full-blown trial or get them to plead out. But have that happen. And once that happens, then the story ends and we can all be happy. But the problem is that this scam is so lucrative that it will continue to be happening until more and more people get locked up. So there you go. But this is happening in Canada. CBC News reports, Stephen sent it to me, Stephen with PH, multiple arrests and hundreds of charges laid in moving company scam. Police say all the belongings, though, have since been returned to their rightful owners. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Be thankful for what you have. You'll end up having more.